It's Joe here from Yogi Footwear. We're here today at the studio of singer, songwriter, legendary lead guitarist and all-round top bloke, Johnny Marr. We're going to have a catch up with Johnny and discuss our new Yogi Johnny Marr collaboration, which is out now. So can you tell me about your relationship with the Yogi brand? How you came across us? What made you want to create this collaboration with us?
Yeah, I've got a couple of friends who've got retail shops and they both recommended Yogi shoes before I'd actually seen a pair. It was love at first sight, Joe. Love at first sight. And I was going out and I was doing a lot of touring. This was like probably about 2018, early 2018. And I'm quite kind of obsessive really. So if I get something that works for me, particularly on tour and on stage and everything, I'll just wear those like to death, you know. And so, you know, I bought several pairs of them and was wearing them out. And then what happened was the ones that I was wearing, which I like the ones that we've done, but they had a big one of those like negative, they're called negative soles. I love the style of them, but anyway, they stopped, they discontinued them, and I kind of begged for a couple of extra pairs, right? And Yogi were like really accommodating, and like, there you go, maybe a couple of extra pairs, which I really needed, because I just got super kind of serious about it. And they just made them up for me, which are essentially like old ones that they've got, but in different colours, and they'd never did leather ones before, and they're ever so slightly modified. And then I've got this new logo to go with the new record that I've made, and that's going on merch and stuff like that. But the logo is then going on the tag as well, so they're pretty nice. I mean, I love them.
Looking back at the many gigs you've performed, were there any close calls? Any footwear malfunctions or mishaps? Any slips or trips?
Well, do you want me to give you my complaints? Well, no. The best one is that when I played at Electric Picnic, which is a festival in Ireland, in Southern Ireland, in between our set, in between a couple of numbers, the PA went off, all the power went off, and it was just like one of those awkward moments when there was like 10,000 people there not knowing what to do. So I thought, oh well, all right, well I'll just jump into the audience and we'll just sort of like, I don't know what I was thinking really. So I went in at the audience, and there was no music going, but everyone was sort of cheering and everything. And of course, as soon as I went in the audience, people tried to pull my shoes off, obviously. So I was like trying to look like I was meant to be doing it, and I was trying to crowd surf while looking like really, really awkward. But really, all I was thinking was, you know, give me my shoes back. So I was like I was fighting with everybody whilst trying to be like, hey everybody. And so there's a pretty funny picture actually somewhere. I'll try and make it available of me just in the middle of all of these like thousands of people, like with this, holding this one Yogi up, and I was like, I've got to keep hold of this thing because I'm not going to play the rest of the set with just one shoe. So yeah, now you mention it, I do have some footwear. It's quite hazardous really, my footwear story.
In the early days of his career, you famously gave Noel Gallagher the Gibson Les Paul, also played by the likes of Pete Townsend. If you had to, gun to your head, how would you rank you three as lead guitarists?
What, me, Pete Townsend and Noel? Well, I will tell you this, like that, what people don't realise about playing with Noel Gallagher, it's the loudest guitar sound. I mean, it's like, I'd imagine, because I played on stage with him a few times now, it's like standing on the sun. That's probably the best sort of way I can describe it. It's the hottest, most massive, crunching. It's a pretty amazing sound. He's so sort of unpretentious about what he does. He kind of makes it look like he's just knocked a few songs off and all of that. And actually, you know, he's a very disciplined person. So I think he was always going to do what he did really. You know, I just gave him a better guitar to do it on really. That's all. You know, he was pretty much had his sights set on what he was going to do. I mean, I guess I was in the right place at the right time to help him out, really. Pete Townsend, yeah, he's kind of amazing. The fact that he's still, you know, for someone like me to see Pete still doing it in his 70s, he's got to be like 75, 76 or something like that, and still really digging it. That's quite inspiring. And but I'd put me above both of those two guys.
Keeping your finger on the pulse of modern music must be quite important to you. Are there any up-and-coming artists that we should be listening to right now?
I think if you're an older musician, if you've been around and you're trying to be relevant or you're trying to stoke with trends, I think that's a bit tragic. But in my case, I've always just searched out, you know, whatever's good. Doesn't have to be particularly modern. But yeah, there's a lot of good new bands. I mean, I liked Fontaine's DC from Dublin. They came out a few years ago. They were really good. There was a band from London called Sorry who were really good. There's a band based in Manchester called BC Camplight. There's Goat Girl, who are great. Yes, loads. You know, I had so when I first started out, 82, 83, the Smiths, right? It was all the time when like Soft Cell were out and electro was a lot synth stuff coming out. And back then, I was asked by the music press, well, is guitar music dead? I was in 83, right? And I was like 18, 19, and I was like, look, you're talking to the wrong person. And then after, you know, and then after Smiths and that, and, you know, several years of what became known as indie music. And then in the mid to late 80s, when rave music happened, every interview I did was like, is guitar music dead? I was like, you're really totally talking to the wrong person. And then you've got Oasis and the Roses and the Mondays and all of that happened. And then in the 90s I was asked, is guitar music dead? And then you had Britpop and Nirvana. And so, you know, I've seen all of these sort of waves come and go. And so I've always known that there's a thing that happens with guitar music particularly. I mean, I like every kind of music, as long as it's good, but I think we're still in the same place now. And interestingly enough, having come through this really, really unprecedented planetary time, it's a fact that the guitar sales have never ever been so big since the 50s. You know, so during the pandemic, more people than ever started playing guitar or took it up, or I mean, you know, played it in the teens or whatever. There's more girls playing guitar now than ever in my lifetime. Some dazzling musicians out there. So I'm back in that sort of situation really, where I'm always going to be asked, is guitar music, you know, I'm just sort of used to it now. 40 years of is guitar music dead? Well, it's taken a long time pegging out, you know what I mean? It's been like 40 years. So I'd say those bands though, Sorry, Goat Girl, pretty great. Oh, there's a band called Woos as well, who are based in London, they're pretty good. There's a whole list of really great new bands, a lot of girls playing.
Before your music career took off, you worked in the rag trade, done a bit of research, and you worked in a place called The Cave in the Arndale Centre, I believe. God, yeah. You've also dabbled a bit in design, I believe. Is fashion a career that you might have pursued if you didn't kind of hit the heights with the Smiths in the early days?
100%, yeah. It was only, you know, it's a cliche really, but you know, working class thing, particularly, don't know whether it's same nowadays, but for me, the kind of the generation I came out of, working class, I have a bit of a theory about it that, you know, back then, I think it was clothes. It wasn't just about vanity. I think for working class people, it was the first encounter with design, I think. So like me and my sister at 8 or 9, I used to live in the inner city, obsessed with clothes, and so were my mates. And then I moved to this really big council estate in South Manchester, and we're all relocated, so even more kids, and you know what everyone's wearing is really, you know, important, and you know, I get obsessed about these different sort of clothes and putting them together. And I look back on that now as an artistic person, and I see that was like my first, and I think a lot of people who aren't aware that they are artistic, it's your first connection with design, I think, and putting stuff together. And then you've got all those other things as well with teenage stuff like codes, you know, that'll never change. You know, you read about it in from the mod times where, you know, certain lapels would have to be at, you know, 1 week they'd have to be at a certain like width, or you know, the jackets would be 4 button, and then 3 weeks later there'd be 3 button, or the skirts would be a certain length, or some of the girls' shoes would have like 2 straps and stuff like that. All these little coded things. Well, that's never really gone away, because I remember fans of when I was playing in Modest Mouse and playing in the Cribs particularly, young people who were wearing Vans, and it was all about one black and white lace and one red and black lace. You know, I was like noticing the kids in the audience and stuff, and that was in 2010 or whatever, so I think it's still probably still going on around town now. There's all these coded things that teenagers kind of pick up on, really, these little details. And I think that's a really beautiful thing in the culture. And so yeah, you know, so to answer your question, I mean, my sort of go-to as a musician as well, I mean, at 15, 16, I've always had Saturday jobs working in clothes shops. But that was also to do with, that's the sort of thing that a musician did, you know, like, you know, I was like, well, I can stand around making compilation tapes, you know, and telling people, don't buy those, buy those ones, they look all right. And I was really into it, and my mates used to have shops around town and all of that. So it was perfect, sort of, it was like, you know, it was a perfect sort of marriage for a musician, really. And then, yeah, I think what you're referring to, like dabbling a bit in design and stuff, was that I did a little short period of designing. I had a clothing company called Elk in the early 2000s in Manchester, and that was a really great experience. And that was completely, we started that off with £1,000. It wasn't like some rock star wanting to like now, you know, expand or have a shop or anything like that. That came about because I started drawing girls stuff, because the girls that I knew, the women that I knew, were having, they all really wanted these, you know, couldn't get any decent suede boots with proper heels on. So I was sort of drawing them, and then I started drawing some skirts, and then I had these jackets that were going with them, and then turned in, and then I was like, anyway, it's a long story, but that was a really good experience. So yeah, and the bugs never really left me. And I'll tell you one story, it's how pathetic I get really about this stuff. Well, I was in the studio with electronic in about '97, summer in London, and we were mixing this album, and the mixing was going on day after day. You're sort of sitting there, someone else is mixing, you listen to the same tune. And I was so missing being in a clothes shop, I just went and stood in the Paul Smith shop in Covent Garden for about 20 minutes until someone came up to me and said, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "I used to work in a clothes shop, do you mind if I just sort of like hang about?" So that's what I did. I had such a good time working in clothes. And again, it wasn't anything to do with vanity. I just like it as a creative thing. I like the way people put clothes together, and so yeah, it's a big part of my life. Yeah.
As your career moved on, you played with lots of different bands. Which one of those would you say is the most fun to share a stage with?
If I had to pick a band that was most fun to share a stage with, it would be Modest Mouse, without a doubt. A lot of people in the UK aren't really that aware of Modest Mouse, but the people who are aware of them are really aware of them. They're like one of those bands that if you're into them, you're really super into them. And we were a 6-piece band, 2 drummers. One guy played lap steel, stand-up bass, accordion, you know. So it wasn't like your sort of regular sort of indie band that, I don't think any of the bands have been that regular, but it was just a really good time in my life personally. You know, it was like I was at the right age to relocate to Portland, Oregon, and Portland, Oregon as well was, at that time, was the happening sort of city in the world, I'd say, really, but certainly in the United States, you know. And it was a really creative time, and my lifestyle really worked there, because I was just like super into running and veganism and all of that sort of stuff. So all of those things, you know, and the band was also very successful. You know, about the album went to #1 and played Madison Square Garden and all that stuff. So it was dead successful, and it was a really happy time, and I was with like really unusual people. But all the bands I've been in have you know, had great times in. It's been a really, you know, so far. And band, I mean, my band now is like an amazing time. But yeah, I'd say if I was going to pick one band, I'd always pick Modest Mouse, because it was just, my life just went into a completely different sort of place, really.
You've just launched the final parts of your album. What was the thinking behind releasing it in stages, parts 1 to 4?
The album's called Fever Dreams Parts 1 to 4, and the thinking behind releasing it in and why the 4 parts and everything was really because when I started writing the album, I got the title Fever Dreams Parts 1 to 4 really quick, and I liked it better than just Fever Dreams. I thought Fever Dreams is a good title, and it turned out to be quite prescient because it was just before lockdown. But I preferred Fever Dreams Parts 1 to 4, so being creative, being an artist, it gave me a creative conundrum. I had to go, well, what's this Parts 1 to 4 about? So I had to find a way of making sense of this Parts 1 to 4, so that's why it came out in 4 parts, but it was purely because I liked the sound of the title. And then when I told the record company that's what I was going to do, they thought I was a marketing genius. I was like, well, you're welcome. But it worked out pretty well because, I recorded it as a double album, and I had this thing. I wanted my cake and eat it, to be honest with you. Like I wanted it to be a double album that people listen to as a double album, because I'd never done a double album with any band that I've been in 40 years. I'd never done one. So that was a new thing for me. That was great. And but then this Parts 1 to 4 business, as I say, I had to make sense of it. So 3 parts came out leading up to the actual album being a thing that people could buy as a double album, and it worked out really pretty well. Because once I'd made that decision that I was going to do that, when I was writing songs, I was kind of moving them around, going, oh no, that doesn't really work on that one now. I'll put that out on part 3, and then I've got 2 fast ones there, and lyrically I've said that, so that needs to go back. And it was a bit like making a meal or something. You had to sort of like keep everything on the boil, like, okay, well now I'm going to do that and that'll be a good one, move there. And it helped me finish certain songs because I'd set up this kind of artistic premise, really. So creativity is really good like that, because you go into something and you just never know how, you never know what kind of things are going to come up. I had no idea that's how I was going to end up writing, just because I like the sound of this title.
To be featured on the latest James Bond soundtrack must have been amazing. Working with Hans Zimmer, you've talked about it in interviews before, how proud you were. But what we'd like to know is, what's the most bizarre, surreal thing that's happened off the back of that?
Well, it was a bit weird because when we finished it, the pandemic happened, so everyone had to just sort of cool it for ages. I think there was people, probably a lot more worried about that situation than I was. But doing the Brits was interesting when you've got that indie kind of outlook. I don't know how I feel about that, but the weirdest thing that came out from doing Bond was that I ended up doing Top Gun in my pajamas at like 3 o'clock in the morning, because the theme needed to be done and Johnny was around, and Johnny's got a guitar. Doesn't matter, we'll get him out of bed. We need it doing now. So, yeah, I suppose you weren't expecting me to say that, were you? No. Yeah, so I ended up doing the theme for the new Top Gun, which I've not seen yet. I've never even seen the first one. And because of that, I got to, I won't say work with Tom Cruise, but I got to spend a bit of time with Tom Cruise, which is quite interesting. So yeah, that's kind of that was a sort of strange thing to come off the back of it. But they just couldn't get the sound of it right, and I was like, I know how to do it. So I got, as is often the way, because if you're in the UK, you're on, in LA, they don't give a shit that you've gone to bed at an hour before. Your phone just goes and they go, what? They go, we need you to do something right now. So anyway, I've got a studio at home, so that's why I ended up doing it in my pajamas.
What pajamas were they?
They're pretty cool ones, don't worry about that. Sunspell.
Nice. So how many pairs of Yogis do you own?
All right, I own about, okay, no exaggeration, I own about 14 pairs of them, maybe, between 14 and 20 pairs, I think.
Which pair from this collection are going to be the first to grace the stage?
Right, the first to grace the stage, I think are going to be the leather ones, because they're a new thing.
A bit more versatile.
Yeah, and there are people in my audience, not just guys, it's kind of the first thing they're clocking, really. Yeah, they're not even like listening to the music. They're just sort of clocking what shoes I'm wearing, or what colour my guitar is. I'm fine with that. I'll take whatever I can get. So I have to keep those people really interested. So the new black leather ones, because they're like unique. Yeah, and these ones are unique as well. Depends whether it's daytime, Joe, or nighttime.
If you decided to have a full-on wardrobe refresh, where are you going shopping?
It's going to be Soho, really. It's going to be Maharishi, Universal Works. I believe Yogi are doing clothes now, right?
Yeah, we've got something coming later this year.
Yeah.
You'll have to tap us up.
Yeah, I will tap you up. No, yeah, you heard that, yeah. Yeah, I really like what Universal Works are doing, and I like You Must Create, really like them, and Maharishi, I think, have gone through a really ace sort of period, and Son of a Stag and Clutch Cafe, I'd say. So all of that kind of Japanese stuff as well.
Favourite guitar?
Favourite guitar is right here. Just because it's the newest one that I've come up with. Because, I mean, my favourite guitar is always going to be my signature Jag, so this is a Fender Signature Jag, and this is the new custom colour one. And I'm not just plugging it, that is actually, it's great when you get a new one. It's been a few years since I've had one, so yeah, Fender Signature. I feel a bit weird saying my own name about it, but Fender Johnny Marr Jaguars, yeah.
City to win the Champions League or England to win a major tournament?
There's absolutely, I don't even have to think about that question. City to win the Champions League all day long.
In a recent Instagram post from your holiday, you had your own James Bond moment, emerging from the ocean in your swimmers.
Oh,
but
yeah.
what I've been told to ask you is, have you ever conquered the top diving board at Sharston Baths?
That is an amazing question. Have I ever conquered the top diving board at Sharston Baths? I did conquer it, yeah. That was like, so that was a thing that, people won't believe it now, but in South Manchester there was these baths, Sharston Baths, that had this major, I think it was Olympic-sized swimming pool, and it was in a, it was in Withershore, so it was kind of working class area, and it was amazing. But I've got to say that diving board it's got to have been like 100 feet high, and it was a major thing, and it took me a few years to I just had to, it was one of those things you had to do it. Yeah, who asked you that question? That's an amazing question. Yeah, right.
You can reform one band. Okay. You don't have to have played with them already. You can reform any band to play with or go and see live. Who's it going to be?
Jimi Hendrix Experience, I think. I mean, being a guitar player, I would say that, but I think, all those people die too soon, don't they? Amy Winehouse and Kurt Cobain and everybody, it's all so unfortunate. But, when you think about what happened to Jimi Hendrix's peers like Miles Davis and Sly Stone, he's in that same sort of area. I think it was like such a shame that he didn't get to make these great kind of soul records in the 70s, because what he was doing up to 1970 was just so pioneering. It wasn't just dazzling on the guitar, it was just like this sort of cosmic space blues. And then you hear Miles Davis's records, and you hear, particularly Sly Stone, Miles Davis and Curtis Mayfield, and people from that sort of area of music, and you think, oh man, had he got through it, that would have been kind of amazing. So yeah, it would definitely be Jimi Hendrix. It's very interesting that. Wow, you're in the wrong job, man. Thanks.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah, no, that's good, yeah, good job, yeah. Yeah.